squealing noise whenever I press on the brake on my John Deere 345 garden tractor mower. And it just started, and it runs fine. I can mow with it, but I can't push the brake without it squealing like crazy. So I'm assuming there's a pulley or something under there, idler pulley, that's frozen up, but I'm not sure. So I'm getting ready to diagnose it, try to get it lifted up and crawl under and see if I can see what's happening under there. Off and crawled under here, and there's 3 idler pulleys on this drive to the mower deck. There's a stationary one up towards the front where the PTO pulley is. That's that right there. This one is stationary, and I think that's the culprit right there, because it makes some pretty bad noise when I spin it. And these 2 back here work in tandem. These 2 right here rotate around this shaft right here, if I can turn it enough for you to see, but trust me, they do move. It's just hard to, when that one goes one way, they both kind of rotate together on the same pivot point to put tension on that belt. You can see it that there. See how one's moving in and one's moving out as I put tension on that belt. And I got this clamped off to take the much pressure off there as I can, so I can spin those things with just a regular carpenter's clamp. And these 2, I think I've lost some of my clamping force, but these 2, when I spun them, did not make much noise and didn't offer hardly any resistance. So, and it sounds like the noise is coming from more towards the front than the back, and that's practically right under the seat right there. So I am really suspicious of this one up towards the front, right by the PTO. So I'm going to try to shoot some WD-40 or something in there into the bearing. It looks pretty tight. I don't know if I can get any lubricant in there or not. And just to see if it quietens it down. And if it does, I know it's that one. And if it is, and it doesn't stay quiet, I can always take it out and examine it further, because it looks pretty easy to take out. All right. Here I go. And I'm pretty sure it was that front one up towards the front. I was able to get more pressure off of that belt so I could spin it more freely, and it's definitely going bad. The one in the middle sounds great, and that one in the back, the big black one, sounds pretty bad too. But I think the noise seems to come from the front, so I oiled it as best as I could. I shot some blaster in there first and then put some oil on the top. And I'm going to fire it up and see what happens, if anything. Sound was definitely that front idler. Quiet as a mouse. So that's awesome. At least when it starts again, I'll know what the problem is and probably just buy a new one. But maybe that oil will soak in there and keep it quiet for another 10 years. We'll see. Hope that helps somebody. By the way, only way you can get to those is pull the deck off, and this is the first time I've ever pulled the deck off. since I've had it. I've only had it a year, and watched a couple videos, and it's so easy to take off, it's ridiculous. So you can see that somewhere else, but I hope this helps somebody. When I got the thing all back together, put the deck on and everything after I cleaned it all up and lubed everything and thought I had it fixed, hit the brake and it made that crazy squealing noise again. So I took the deck back out and started looking some more, and I've rigged it up to where I could keep it running when I wasn't on the seat, and just gently push down on the brake with my hand while I was looking under there, and there's no doubt it was coming from this power takeoff clutch on the front pulley up there. And so I decided to try to take that off and see what the heck was inside there that was the problem. So I took that main bolt off the engine shaft coming out of the bottom, with my impact wrench. And it was weird because that big old washer that was underneath that bolt holding it on just broke in half when I took it. Apparently it was in 2 parts. And this is being held in there by that bolt going all the way through that, and those 3 studs sticking out there on the side with nuts on them. Because when I took the bolt out, it still wouldn't come down, so I took those nuts off these studs here that have springs on them, and the whole thing just fell off. This is the electromagnet up here that engages this plate and starts this to spinning, which makes the blade spin. And what I found, I think, is the real problem, is that big fat bearing right there. And this little pressed in sleeve spins while the pulley doesn't spin while the engine's turning, until you flip the power takeoff switch, which engages this electromagnet plate with that plate there and starts this blade pulley turning. And for some reason, whenever you put on that brake, I don't know what the brake does, honestly, but it shouldn't have hardly anything to do with the drive belt, but somehow it's put some kind of pressure on this main long drive belt back to the transmission that just puts enough sideways force on that thing to make it start squealing. Because once you engage the power takeoff, the blades and everything, you don't hear it squealing anymore, no matter what you do. But only without the power takeoff running and pushing down on that brake, it starts squealing like crazy. And I'm thinking it's got to be that bearing there. So I'm going to open up that bearing and see what it looks like inside. So that's what that seal looked like. Yeah, the bearing cover. When I took it off, and it looks pretty dry. And it feels pretty rough when I spin it. It's not smooth by any means, it's really jerky. And you can see when I'm trying to turn it, it jerks and stops. So I think I'm going to put some brake clean in there, try to get it spinning freely, and then repack it and see what happens. That's what it looks like after I cleaned it up as best as I could with brake clean, WD-40, putting it in there a bunch of times and blasting out with air and over again, and I just kept getting out a bunch of like 50-year-old petrified grease particles. I've got a lot of it out. I got as much as out as I could. It looks clean, but just feels awfully tight. It doesn't bounce or grab anymore, but it just seems like an awfully tight bearing, but it looks as good as new inside. So I'm packing it back up and packing it with grease and turning it, packing it with grease and turning it, and then I'll get the seal back on and put it back on, see what happens. Well, this sure has been an eye-opening experience. Been working on this thing practically all day, trying to figure out why that thing was screeching whenever I pressed down on the brake like crazy. I thought it was burying something, and I'll be damned if I don't think it was this parking brake release all along. I noticed that it had stopped going back whenever I let it go. It would stay about like that whenever I let the parking brake off. You push the brake down all the way, you lift this up, and that locks the parking brake on. Well, I'd release it, put that down, and let go. But I noticed it was only going about that far anymore. And I thought, well, it's just getting old. Well, apparently, if that thing doesn't go all the way back up, it tries to turn on the brake on that pulley whenever you even slightly touch the brake. It's a safety feature, I guess, to kill the blades from spinning. I don't know what it does, honestly. It does something to that clutch. Anyway, whenever that is out and you're stepping on the brake, it just turns on the brake and that pulley solenoid at the same time, and it starts squeaking like hell. The spring had broke inside there that returns that, and when I started messing around with that, I just happened to notice that it wasn't squealing anymore. So I'll show you what I mean. And you could also start it without touching the brake. No squeal. With the brake. Idling with the brake. It had something to do with the safety switch in there all along. Tiny little spring there that attaches to that red plastic lever. And if you can look closely, you can see where it was supposed to be over there, and it pulled out of that plastic. The plastic wore out. So I drilled a new hole over on this side and attached it there, and it runs over to behind that little circuit board right there. And it's really hard to get to. I had to take this panel off. The easiest way to do it would have been to get really good access would be to pull the battery out, which is probably what I would have done, because then I could have gone right down in there at it instead of trying to fish it in between here and in the back behind there. But I swear to God, I think all my problems all along were that stupid little piece of plastic broke off and that spring came out. I just can't believe it. I've torn this whole thing apart trying to find out what was making that squealing noise, and I think it was just that. So I'll run it for a while and use it and see if that's true or not. is so crazy. I don't know what that has to do with that power takeoff squealing like that, but as you can see, it does not squeal at all, no matter what I do. Blade on, blade off, brake on, brake off, pulling up that lever, pushing on it. That spring being off of there made that power takeoff squeal like crazy whenever you touch the brake. So I did all that other crazy stuff for nothing. If that happens to you and you're touching the brake and it's squealing like crazy, look and see if this release spring is broken. That turns out to be all it was on mine. Don't ask me what that has to do with anything, because I do not understand it. Maybe somebody does, but I don't. Anyway, that's what fixed it, was fixing that spring on that orange lever. So, just FYI.